Former Aurora City Councilman Brian Frazier announced this week that he will run for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate in 2016. Frazier joined State Senator Tim Neville and 3 others looking to challenge incumbent Democrat Michael Bennet. Patty, this was pretty big news this week. I guess if folks are following Kyle Clark's Twitter feed, that he announced they were looking for a new conservative commentator, so maybe there was a little bit of a leak. But so far, he's the biggest name. I think, with no offense to State Senator Tim Neville, I think a lot of folks have heard about Ryan Frazier, but not exactly a history of big success after he hasn't done anything really as winning a race since the Aurora City Council. What do you think of the announcement?
Well, I think maybe Kyle Clark's Twitter feed was the only thing that got really excited about this. If you look up Brian Frazier, who's an interesting guy, he's been on the cover of Westward, he ranks on one list as the 98th most prominent African-American Republican, which is kind of like getting a bonus at the VA. It's not a really huge honor. 98th most prominent. In 2009, he explored running against Bennet, didn't catch fire, and dropped that bid. He ran against Perlmutter, did a little bit better, still didn't really catch fire in the 7th. In this case, we're hearing that there's certain Republicans promising anyone prominent, maybe ranking higher than 98th, $2 million out of the box if they will run against Bennet, who is already, has $5 billion in the bank? You know, it is going to be a very, very tough race. And I don't see Ryan Frazier or Peggy Littleton, who's looking into it, or Blahus, or any of the others who are running to really give him a run for that money.
David, has anything transpired in the last, 6 years since we've seen Ryan Frazier officially on the scene that tells, 5 years, that would tell you, yeah, this is going to be a real competitive candidate that could vie for the Senate next year?
Sure. The fact is Ryan Frazier ran against Ed Perlmutter, lost, but running against Ed Perlmutter in that district has now been scientifically proven to be an impossible task. He ran a respectable race, and one of the things you learn by running is about how to run, and when you run against Perlmutter, you're running against the best. So that's a valuable experience for him. Every time anybody other than Tim Neville says they're thinking about running for Senate, Michael Bennet is unhappy. He knows he could demolish Neville, but there's anybody else, they're unknowns. They could do well. Back to the Joni Ernst thing, who'd ever heard of her, and then becoming the next United States Senator from Iowa. So I would say Greg Lopez, the former Mayor of Parker, Peggy Littleton, El Paso County Commissioner, and others. Of course, they're not known beyond a small area, but they will have the opportunity through the caucus process and beyond to show that they have the quality to step up.
And what do you think about Ryan Frazier's chances, or really any of the other Republicans that we know of so far running, to maintain a statewide race? This is going to be a big deal. Millions of dollars being poured in from around the nation. It's a much different event than whether it be a city council race or even a congressional race. Can that transition happen easily?
Well, the idea that the Republicans will run a candidate who will be competitive for this seat, I think is a no-brainer. It's going to happen. I mean, this is going to be a highly watched state in a highly watched and very close presidential election. This is the #2 pickup target. It has been all along for the Republicans, just behind Nevada. And yeah, I mean, I think unless someone is a complete disaster, you're going to have somebody who will at least be able to keep up with Bennet. But the difference between keeping up with a guy that is that well funded and now has 6 years of being known across the state and beating him is a pretty substantive gap there. And that's where I don't know that Ryan Frazier closes that gap. Look, I've worked with Frazier. He's a smart guy. I'm going to be a little harder on him than Dave was, though. Let's remember 2010, when he lost to Ed Perlmutter by about 10 points, was a landslide Republican year. And that is a district that, while Perlmutter does far better than a generic Democrat would in that district, that's still pretty close to being a swing district. At least it was in 2010. I've got to think that in Washington, D.C., there are still people that are cramming into Mike Coffman's office and asking him, please look at running again, please look at running again. Cory Gardner originally passed in the 2014 race. He got in February of 2014. There is still time for Coffman to make that decision. It's just hard to see where the level of knowledge of these candidates, of any of the 6 of them that we're talking about here, is going to be able to catch up to Bennett's ability to spend and craft his own narrative. It's going to be close regardless, but I think there's going to be a lot of work to actually beat him right now.
Ben, we talked about Ryan Frazier's going right up against Bennett, but that's assuming a lot. Is Ryan Frazier the front runner in the Republican nomination race?
Well, you know, depending on what you read and where, you might have seen the current class of Republican Senate candidates referred to as the clown car posse. I don't think that Ryan Frazier entering the field really changes the picture very much. As others have pointed out, he lost pretty badly to Perlmutter in a big Republican wave year. He then proceeded to lose to Ed Tower for the mayor of Aurora, in a place that presumably was a little more familiar with him, and he struggled badly there as well. You know, I think that every day that goes by, even though, you know, every new entrant does no doubt make Michael Bennet unhappy, I think that the field says that Bennett should win. And certainly the Republicans are going to pump resources into the race, and there's going to be a lot of money thrown around, and whoever the nominee is will be put in the best light possible. But I just don't think it'll be enough to overcome what Bennett has.